What time does the 7 o'clock meeting start?
7 o'clock. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, everybody. Welcome to Position of Neutrality. We're still trying to figure out the lighting. Sorry that you can't see it at the beginning of the broadcast. Before we start, I don't want to forget Aaron and Yakima. He just yelled at us that he was checked in. We're all ready to go. We open every session with a prayer, and Wayne's here tonight to do that for us.
Hello, everybody. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time that we could spend with you. We thank you for your presence. Heavenly Father, reveal yourself to us. Open our eyes that we may see the ways in which you work. We ask that we be lights for you in this world. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Wayne. So for those of you that haven't been on before or don't know what we do, we've been doing for lots of years. We take a look at the suggested instruction for a step or so a week directly out of this book, and we use this book in 12-Step Recovery. Why?
It works.
Yeah, the process described by the authors of this book has been proven to work for addicts of the hopeless variety, addicts to alcohol and other substances, and of course, over time, all kinds of behavioral disorders. So the manner of living suggested in these pages by their testimony of what happened for them has been proven to work for all kinds of people that are plagued with a human condition that has become deplorable in some way. Yeah? So tonight we're going to be talking about step 2, and we want to get everyone focused on the where and the how. So the whole idea of step 2, number 1, if you'll look at the step, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, and people automatically presume it's some old idea they have, some religious idea or some prejudice they have. They have only focused us on the power intentionally. They haven't named the power. They just told you that that's what they came to believe in, and they told you of a process in which they came to. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So no one's expecting your old ideas to be of much use to you when you first start on this journey. We're going to start doing some things differently, and because of the encounter in step 2, you'll be empowered to do things differently. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the instructions for that start in chapter 4 in a chapter called We Agnostics. And it's interesting they use the word we, don't you think? They're very intentional with all their words. They used the words they meant the words they said. Why'd they say we agnostics instead of those agnostics?
Because it was the first 100 people that wrote the book.
Yeah, it was their demographic. And they all realized at some level of their life, all of us doubt the power.
Yes.
Right? In some area of our lives. Or we wouldn't be living the way we was living.
That's true.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So anyway, it says in the preceding chapters, you have learned something of alcoholism. So I guess we should ask. In the preceding chapters, have we learned something of alcoholism?
Yes.
What have we learned?
We learned that it's a disease characterized by a physical craving to consume alcohol once I put any alcohol into my body.
Yes.
And what else?
I can't remember what was that. The possession of the mind, because it's my best friend. It's a therapeutic. It changes my perception of reality. It makes good times better, and it makes bad shit go away. And it works every time.
So Sean is describing, for those of you who can't hear him, his relationship with alcohol. So, okay, so all of us have learned something about, at this point, what we needed to move forward. Yes? And it says, we hope we've made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. Have they made that clear?
Yes.
Now, a lot of people have been through a lot of therapies, so will have all kinds of ideas. But the authors at that time, remember, alcoholism was not a diagnosis. So what they told you is you may have all kinds of similarities, but if you're really this guy, you will have one symptom in common.
Yep.
Do you know what that is?
Yep.
What he said is that we have this phenomenon of craving. When I put it in my body, I have what may be a manifestation of an allergy. And what a lot of people don't understand about that is if you are a drinker and you find that alcohol energizes you, that is an abnormal response to a sedative.
Right?
So a medical person looking at that would say, oh, that may be the manifestation of an allergy. Right? So you understand what that is. That if I have that, when I put it in my body, it affects me differently than others, then I'm in the class. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right. So then they give us some other tests to try on ourselves. If when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely. So there's a qualification entirely. So it's not, can I stop? It's, can I stop and stay stopped?
Right.
And if you've had trouble stopping and staying stopped, you might want to pay attention. Yes?
Yes.
Or if when drinking, you have little control over the amount you take. So I always ask, which one did you discover first?
The second
The second one.
Yeah, I always ask, because this is unique to the experience, right? Some of us would go long periods of time without doing anything, and then when we did, we went completely off the rails because we just had no control once we started. Others did all right for a while, and then all of a sudden started getting in trouble, and then found they couldn't stop and stay stopped.
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, it doesn't matter. What it says is, if that be or you're probably alcoholic, and if that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. So they're trying to break it to you as gently as they can. You've been chasing a spirit. You're probably not going to get set free by anything less than a spirit. So this is a process we're about to enter. Yes?
Yes.
And if you don't believe you've been chasing a spirit, why do you think they call it spirits?
Right.
Look at the promises of the 9th step in reverse about you taking a drink. Not regret the past, or wish you shut the door on it. Comprehend the word serenity and no peace. No one was a drinker like me.
Oh.
The house could be burning down. And
Yes.
Serenity. All right. To one who feels he's an atheist or agnostic, such an experience seems impossible. So this is time to get honest with yourself. You may not like the term atheist or agnostic. You may not profess yourself to be that, but let's examine how you're living your life.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
But to continue as he is means disaster, especially if he's an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. When did they tell us about that guy?
Back in the doctor's opinion, Bill's story.
Yeah,
Chapter 2.
yeah.
Chapter 3.
There's a solution, right?
Yeah.
The real alcoholic, they called him. Yeah. So to be doomed to an alcoholic death or to live on a spiritual basis are not always easy alternatives to face.
That's funny shit.
So why does Sean think it's funny?
Because we've all sat there and went, well.
Alcohol, yeah. Yeah. Can I get back to you tomorrow?
Yeah.
So we're in love with the familiar no matter how difficult the familiar is.
Right.
And so now I'm being asked to move into the unfamiliar and to let down all the stories I give myself to make how I'm living okay.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's fairly normal response, really. There's another book, some of you might have read it, about a guy at the well that sat there for years crippled, and he never would jump in when the pool would stir because he couldn't get there quick enough and no one would help him. And this teacher came by and looked at him and said, "You want to get well?" He said, "Yes, but no one will put me in the water." He said, "Well, then pick up your mat and walk." That's what we want you to know here in this room and in the sound of my voice is there's nothing wrong with you. Quit telling yourself that story.
Yes.
And we're going to show you, we're going to encounter power here tonight to take you there. Okay? All right. So to one who feels he's an atheist or agnostic, such an experience seems impossible to begin. But to continue as he is means disaster, especially if he's an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. To be doomed to an alcoholic death or live on a spiritual basis are not always easy alternatives to face, but it isn't so difficult. Sorry, I regressed a little, but I wanted to reiterate that there's a process through which this is going to happen. Yes? That's why we're in a come-to step. Okay, so about half our original fellowship were of exactly that type. So what type?
Atheists or agnostics.
Declared, right? There is no God, or God cannot be proven to exist. And the other half of the fellowship was what?
Christians dying their disease.
Yeah, they're believers who somehow are not living out the principles they profess. Is it? Yeah? Okay, so if that fits pretty much everybody, then we're good to go. So it says, at first, some of us tried to avoid the issue, hoping against hope we were not true alcoholics. Anybody thought you had overreacted? Okay. So, but after a while, we had to face the fact that we must find a spiritual basis to life or else. See, what I didn't know in my addiction is I had a spiritual basis for my life. It came in a bottle. And I didn't do anything without access to it. And if I did find myself having to do something without access to it, I did not have a good time. So life beyond that's not going to be any different, but I have to be doing something different for my ease and comfort, don't I? Yeah. All right. So at first, some of us tried to avoid the issue, hoping against hope we were not true alcoholics. But after a while, we had to face the fact that we must find a spiritual basis of life or else. Perhaps it's going to be that way with you. But cheer up. Something like half of us thought we were atheists or agnostics. Our experience shows that you need not be disconcerted.
Amen.
I call your attention to that only because we know where people come from, how they find us. They said, however you believed coming in here, if you'll do what we're suggesting to you, the power will change your mind.
Yes.
Our experience shows you need not be disconcerted. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
And you don't have to believe them on this side. You just got to believe your own condition on this side and then do what they said. Don't read what they said. Don't quote what they said. Do what they said.
Yes.
And see what happens. All right. So if a mere code of morals or a better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, many of us would have recovered long ago. But we found that such codes and philosophies did not save us, no matter how much we tried. For those of you, how many of you tried to go back to your church family and pray it away? So how many of you came to recovery and did everything but the manner of living suggested, but you figured just by hanging out and saying the right stuff, you'd get better? Fellowship your way to freedom. Okay, that's all they're talking about. So we could wish to be moral, we could wish to be philosophically comforted. In fact, we could will these things with all our might, but the needed power wasn't there. Our human resources, as marshaled by the will, were not sufficient. They failed utterly. I'd like to call your attention to what they told you. The reason I want the manner of living and the power I encounter and improve consciousness of on a daily basis is I need philosophical comfort on a daily basis.
Yes. Yes.
My outwardly life might just look picturesque as hell, but if you were in here, you'd be putting on the armor. Anyone know what I'm talking about? Anybody live in the war of self-doubt from time to time?
Yeah.
Any of you have been caught up in the conspiracy of others from time to time? So this is power to philosophically comfort me. So we need to understand that more than intellectually, because that's what I know I need. Yes?
Yes.
So lack of power, that was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves. Obviously, but where and how were we to find this power? Now, Carrie Ann and Denise are breaking it out a little early, but what we're talking about is let's focus on the power and not the name and not the prejudice and not anything else you got going on right now. They're going to tell us where and how, and rather than leaving a whole bunch of people hanging, we're going to go see the answer and then come back and read the instructions, because that's just the way addicts do.
Yes.
You know, just get me the high, and then we'll worry about how to cook it later. Right? Okay, so go to page 55. So 55, they say, actually, I'm 2 paragraphs down. Actually, we were fooling ourselves. For deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God.
Power.
So now, some of you that are catching this for the first time, when I say God,
Power.
they say power, so that we focus. We don't want anyone left out of this experience because of a bad experience they had in the past. So we want to focus you on the sensory experience of power to live, and then let you grow in consciousness and form your own ideas, right? So they said if you were a man, woman, or child, does that cover pretty much everyone in?
Yep.
Okay. Then deep down within each of us is this fundamental idea of God.
Power.
So notice how they said it was found deep down within us. Where are your ideas found? Your ideas are found in your mind, where the main problem centers.
Yeah.
So this is not your idea of God. This is God's idea of you, which is why your old prejudice shouldn't get in the way if you don't let it.
Right.
He has appointed you for such a time as this. You were chosen. I knew you. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So it says, it may be obscured by calamity, by pomp, by worship of other things, but in some form or other it is there. So what is my fourth step inventory going to reveal? Calamities, pomps, and worships. Yes? It's going to show what's happened to me in the world and how I responded to it, and what I've done to others in the world and how they responded to it. It's going to show me how when things were going well, how I took the credit, and when things are going less well, I gave everyone else the blame.
Right.
And then worships, well, I shouldn't have to explain that to anyone who's ever chased dope or alcohol very hard,
Right.
because we surrender everything to that altar. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So those things have gotten in the way of my consciousness of this power to live within me. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Consciousness meaning the awareness of being aware. It's not enough to be aware. I got to be aware that I'm aware.
Yes.
Okay? All right. So for faith in a power greater than ourselves and miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives are facts as old as man himself. We finally saw that faith in some kind of God was a part of our makeup just as much as a feeling we have for a friend. So we're always going to have attachments as humans that are going to become objects of our worship. And if you don't think so, have a job you really love and then lose it. Who are you after that happens? Are you less? What's your mind tell you? See what I mean? So we all have them. We have them in all kinds of ways. And then if we were mistreated in life, we take on some really detrimental IDs, right? Ideas of who we are. How many of you ended up living a life that really was not you, but if you were stuck in it, you were going to rip people's throat out just to prove it really was you? Yeah, we meet a lot of them. Yeah. And we're acting completely out of character because we know that's not what we're here to do. But that's, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it good. Daddy says, find something you're good at and do it well. So I found drinking,
Right.
Okay. So anyway, sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he was there. He was as much a fact as we were. We found the great reality deep down within us. In the last analysis, it's only there that he may be found. It was so with us. So, where are we going looking? And how are we going to look? Sometimes we're going to have to look fearlessly, right? So, the inventory I'm about ready to make a decision about is starting to make a little more sense now why I'm going to go in there, right? Get properly armed with the facts about me. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. And then it says in the last analysis, it's only there that he may be found. That's why I need the manner of living. Because no matter how long I'm sober, I still have worships.
Yes.
And I don't even know I'm picking them up. Ideas that I want to hold about myself, ideas that I want others to hold about me, possessions that I have that say something about me, whatever. I have them. Anyway, so there we go. We know where and how, right? So now we're back to 45. Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem.
Yes.
And you may ask, which problem? All of them.
All of them.
Because all of my problems are probably at least partially perception.
Yes.
So if I'm changed and I perceive differently, then I have fewer problems.
Right.
And most of the problems I've ever encountered when I really invested in them, I found out they were opportunities. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so that means we've written a book which we believe to be spiritual as well as moral. And it means, of course, that we are going to talk about God.
Power.
There you go. You guys are right on time that time. So why do we call the power God here? I used to say that a lot at meetings I did in the early days about this is the power we call God, because I want people focused. Quit thinking you know what we're talking about. Because if we're talking in the Spirit, you'll know who's talking, and it'll interpret for you specifically for you. Right? So here difficulty arises with agnostics. Many times we talk to a new man and watch his hope rise as we discuss his alcoholic problems and explain our fellowship. So they were better at those days than we are today about talking to the new guy. Look, we have a program and a fellowship. A lot of the people in the fellowship do not do the manner of living, and there is no requirement to do so. But you will find, if you really need this manner of living, that you will have a much less happy time in the world if you do not participate in the manner of living. Does it make sense?
Yes.
But you by all means come into our fellowship. But his face falls when we speak of spiritual matters, especially when we mention God.
Power.
For we've reopened a subject which our man thought he had neatly evaded or entirely ignored. We still have those people that come in our fellowships. They think they've evaded it. They think they're going to keep us out. But we're just talking about power. And all of us, everyone, regardless of what your professed belief is, you need power to live as a human being. That's what we're talking about. Power to live. Sensory ease and comfort in the world without having to go out in the world to get it. Power to live. Yeah? So we know how he feels. They really do. They really know what it feels like to be dying in your addiction, sitting behind a dumpster, sucking out of some nasty bottle, laying in your soiled pants. I'm going to do better next time. We all know that feeling to some degree. So it says, we have shared his honest doubt and prejudice. So if you're new, that's your obligation to yourself. Share your honest doubt and prejudice. Not something silly. I just don't believe. That's all not. No, we're talking to you about a sensory experience. I can feel it on you. Why can't you feel it? I had a pastor one time say, I don't know what you're talking about. I can't feel anything. I said, well, tell your arm. Your hair's standing straight up. There's something in you awake.
Yeah.
Anyway, so some of us have been violently anti-religious. That's usually people who've really been harmed. Yeah? So to others, the word God brought up a particular idea of him with which someone had tried to impress them during childhood. Perhaps we rejected this particular conception because it seemed inadequate. With that rejection, we imagined we had abandoned the God idea entirely. We were bothered with the thought that faith and dependence upon a power beyond ourselves was somewhat weak, even cowardly. So I think a lot of us fall into that, right? But remember, we're not looking at a power beyond ourselves. We're looking for a power within ourselves. So we're already getting a little bit of different information, and we're learning how to recognize that power as they unfold, right? So it says, we look upon this world of warring individuals, warring theological systems, and inexplicable calamity with deep skepticism. We look askance at many individuals who claim to be godly. Powerly. They're trying. They're really trying, guys. So it says a question. How could a supreme being have anything to do with it all? When they put a question mark, they want you inward, right? Have you ever had this question? Right? Eyesight without insight, spiritual blindness. Ask yourself, what's the story you're telling yourself? So if you've ever had a thought like that, how could a supreme being have anything to do with the world and the shape we see it? And who could comprehend a supreme being anyhow?
The supreme being.
Sean points out that the supreme being probably has some understanding of who and what he is. Yeah, and it's another side note. Well, you know, the fundamental wisdom of this power we call God is not that he created all things so he knows all things. It's that he knows he is not that which he created, which is where we, as children of God, fall short. We think we created us, in spite of all the evidence to the contrary. Yes? So yet in other moments, we found ourselves thinking when enchanted by a starlit night, who then made all this? So this is important for you in the coming to believe step to focus on the experience. They're talking about being enchanted by a starlit night. So they're talking about seeing something really, truly inspiring, almost an out-of-body experience, and feeling like you're watching yourself see something. It's moving in you. Have you ever seen something like that? Let's dig a little deeper. Those of you who have been in dangerous situations, who's ever been in a car wreck, a gunfight, something really gnarly, and time seemed to slow down for you. Inevitably, someone's had that experience. So when that happened, you experienced your consciousness. One of these names for this sensory power we're talking about. Does it make sense? Who's an athlete or wannabe athlete? Right? The perfect catch, the perfect throw, the perfect shot. When you made it, that impossible thing, everyone else saw it as impossible too, but you had no doubt, right? You're probably trained to do it or whatever. Yes, you've had that happen. When that happened, you experienced your intuitive self. Does it make sense? Yeah. So all of us have had these experiences if we cared to. Yes, that's the point. All right. So it says there was a feeling of awe and wonder, but it was fleeting and soon lost. So some of you even felt it as you brought it to consciousness here just now, because I felt you doing it. Yeah. But you notice how quickly it dissipates, right? Oh, yes, I've had that visitation. But yeah, go on. All right. So yes, we have agnostic temperament, have had these thoughts and experiences. So now can we own some agnosticism? Yes. Okay. So let us make haste to reassure you. We found that as soon as we are able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commence to get results, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power, which is God. So for their purposes, we got to agree on the sensory experience, because sensory experiences are by their nature elusive. So we're going to agree on one name so we can all agree on what it is. There was a book written a long time ago about everyone knows what a rose smells like, but no one can describe what it smells like to smell a rose, because it's sensory. Everyone has tasted Coca-Cola, but nobody can describe exactly what it's like to do it because it's sensory. Yes? When I say Coke in this setting, I've got a whole different... So I was very careful. So for our purposes in recovery, we call that power God because it's a shared experience. Does that make sense? Yeah. We're talking about the subject of my experience, not the object of my belief. Lay aside all your prejudice about objects of your belief and focus on the subject of your experience. That's the power to live. Yes? Okay. So much to our relief, we discovered we did not need to consider another's conception of God. Why not? Yep, this power is not a conception, it's an experience. Yes? Yes. So our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach into effect a contact with him. How do we know that?
Because we see the success of the people that went before us.
And we've seen the ones that have come after, and we sort of start to see our own, don't we? Yeah. When I try and reflect back on who it was that finally had this encounter and went another way, there was no way I could have comprehended any of the things that were happening in me and through me and for me. And I definitely did not bring it about, because I'd have been fighting if I was well enough. Anyway, as soon as we admitted the possible existence of a creative intelligence, a spirit of the universe underlying the totality of things, we began to be possessed of a new sense of power and direction, provided we took other simple steps. So you've probably, if you've been out there running the trap houses and the bars or whatever you've been doing, you've probably been possessed of a sense of power and direction that drove about every activity of your life. Right? And so they're telling you this one's new. But it's going to no less take over and start driving. Does it make sense? Yeah. And you don't need to fully define or comprehend it, because none of us can. But what we can do is learn to listen and move in the direction we receive. Okay. So we found that God does not make too hard terms with those who seek him. To us, the realm of the Spirit is broad, roomy, all-inclusive, never exclusive or forbidding to those who earnestly seek. It's open, we believe, to all men. And we're talking about the family of man, not I know we weren't gender neutral in the 1930s. So when therefore we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. This applies too to other spiritual expressions which you find in this book. Do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. Now, I'm going to call to your attention because I gave you the instructions first, and now we're rolling back into the experience. When they tell you your own conception based on the experience they're detailing, don't believe the fellowship nonsense that it's a group of drunks or a doorknob or a light bulb unless you swallowed that motherfucker. That ain't it. It's deep down inside of you. Don't die because of someone else's ignorance. Because they're going to be there and they're going to say that crap, but that ain't right. I need power to philosophically comfort me, and I got to take this seriously because I am very uncomfortable. Does that make sense? All right, so at the start, this was all we needed to commence spiritual growth, to affect our first conscious relation with God as we understood Him. Now, see how they clarified it for you and they didn't use the language I did? Conscious relation with this power as I understood this power. I first met the power and had called to my attention that power was the power, and then I started seeking to improve consciousness, and now I am in conscious relation with a power within me that is greater than me. And you know how I know that? Because I'm empowered to act better than I feel like acting. I'm empowered to speak better than I feel like speaking. And I still think like Joe, but I act more like him every day if I stay in touch. Does that make sense? Some of y'all are feeling that. The heat went up. The heat went up. We got the air down. All right. So it says, afterward, we found ourselves accepting many things which then seemed entirely out of reach. That was growth. But if we wished to grow, we had to begin somewhere. So we used our own conception, however limited it was. All they're telling you is the same thing religious people told you all your life, is that He's going to meet you where you are. You don't have to get cleaned up to come to God. All you got to do is come to yourself and follow. Does that make sense? So we needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself? That's your second step experience, guys. Go to a quiet place. Look yourself in the eye in the mirror and ask yourself, do I now believe, or am I at least willing to believe, that there's a power greater than me? And I'm going to tell you another little secret maybe people won't tell you. If you do not believe or are willing to believe, you are wasting valuable high time. Because no one comes to these fellowships if cocaine, methamphetamine, alcohol, whatever isn't a power greater than us. This is not a club I aspire to as a youngster. So nobody told you. We just said there's a power that wants your attention. Yes? And that's why we're focused on letting go of one power, picking up another power, cleaning house, and then moving in a different direction. Yes? All right. So now that I've offended some percentage, y'all, we'll sign your slips anyway. As soon as a man can say that he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he's on his way. How do they know?
Experience.
They can feel it. When you say you're willing and you actually start moving in your willingness is divine power. It comes with a sensory effect. And we all know. You think you can lie? You cannot lie to me without my permission. Now, if you're pretty enough, I might go ahead and go along with you for a minute, but that don't mean I'm believing it. You know what I mean? It has been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective structure can be built. So that cornerstone of my willingness to believe, right? There's a story in another book says I do believe, help my unbelief. We just heard that word last week. I do believe, help my unbelief. Sometimes that's what we need to remind ourselves. I do believe, but help my unbelief. Okay, so that was great news to us, for we had assumed we could not make use of spiritual principles unless we accepted many things on faith which seemed difficult to believe. So did you guys get caught up in that? You had to believe it all to believe any of it? We sometimes think we've got to swallow an awful lot, and we really learn that, no, we just got to admit a need that I have within myself. And then miraculously, something fills that need. And then if I'll just continue to pursue it for my fellow man, more than my needs get met, my wants get met, and other people's deliverance gets met. So when people presented us with spiritual approaches, how frequently did we all say, I wish I had what that man has. I'm sure it would work if I could only believe as he believes. But I cannot accept as surely true the many articles of faith which are so plain to him. So it was comforting to learn that we could commence at a simpler level. Have you gotten to recovery or to some phase of spiritual growth and thought, well, it would work for me if I had that kind of belief? Because we almost all of us have had something like that. I will tell you this. If you are impressed with someone's faith that you can see, that means you already have it. We just need to wake you up.
Yes.
Because you would be repelled by it otherwise. Yep. So besides a seeming inability to accept much on faith, we often find ourselves handicapped by obstinacy, sensitiveness, and unreasoning prejudice. So how many of you wouldn't like to see yourself described that way, but you may have exhibited some obstinacy, unreasoning prejudice? Yes? Sensitiveness, any of you? I came into a fellowship of AA where they said, I'm sensitive because I'm an alcoholic. You're not sensitive because you're alcoholic, but because you're an alcoholic, your sensitivity is killing you. So you might want to outgrow your sensitivity, right? The world is not obligated to not trigger Joe. The world simply reflects how Joe's thinking and feeling in a constant attempt to wake Joe up.
True.
So this is something people should internalize, that, you know, instead of cursing them for disturbing your slumber, you should be blessing them for waking you up. All right. So many of us have been so touchy that even casual reference to spiritual things made us bristle with antagonism. This sort of thinking had to be abandoned. Isn't that interesting how declarative they are? How many of you have tried to abandon thought? How many of you found you kept going back and picking it back up? So the only way I abandon thought is to resolutely focus on someone else's need and work diligently for that. And somehow, miraculously, my need gets met. Anyway, though some of us resisted, we found no great difficulty in casting aside such feelings. Faced with alcoholic destruction, we soon became as open-minded on spiritual matters as we had tried to be on other questions. In this respect, alcohol was a great persuader. It finally beat us into a state of reasonableness. Sometimes this was a tedious process. We hope no one else will be prejudiced for as long as some of us were. That's our hope for you, that something we say will resonate within you, stir the spirit in you, and you'll start living in a different way before you have to burn it all the way to the ground. But many of us had to burn it all the way to the ground. And all I can tell you is, having had it burned all the way to the ground more than once, restoration is still possible. So, anyway, the reader may still ask why he should believe in a power greater than himself. So they already know of our lingering prejudice, yes? We think there are some good reasons. Let's have a look at them. The practical individual today is a stickler for facts and results. Nevertheless, the 20th century readily accepts theories of all kinds, provided they're firmly grounded in fact. We have numerous theories, for example, about electricity. Everybody believes them without a murmur of doubt. Why this ready acceptance? You don't have to, Sean. But
I got the shit shocked out of me when I was 5 years old.
everyone's waiting for Sean's response. So here, the point is, and I think this is so profound. Remember, Bill's a stock analyst, and he's trying to make the case why it's more logical to believe than not to believe based on their collective experience. Right. And so what they're saying is, I know y'all believed in these whatever religious theories and it didn't work, or you saw people acting out of what they should be. And so, but no. We're talking about tangible sensory experiences. Why do I believe in electrical theory? to his point because I have experienced its effects. Someone has turned on a light. I've accidentally been shocked. I have tangibly experienced the effects of this power that no one can fully define or comprehend. So it's not that I have no capacity for faith. I exhibit it every day when I get up and I'm a little warm and I set the thermostat a little lower. I don't sit there and stare at it waiting to feel better. I go rest now because I know I soon will feel better. That's an act of faith. And I don't have to run around telling people how enlightened I am any more than I have to tell you when I turn on the lights. It's self-evident. So if you're telling people you're enlightened, you're probably a little dark there, dimwit. Don't tell them that. Show them that. Right? All right. So why this ready acceptance? Simply because it's impossible to explain what we see, feel, direct, and use without a reasonable assumption as a starting point. It's easy to understand why I think I did certain things because I was there in those things. But if it wasn't my intent and my outcome was something better than I planned, why do I get the credit? But it's easier to just, well, I guess I'm just talented that way. But I don't have the same sense of responsibility when it goes all bad. Or at least I try not to, yeah? All right, so everybody nowadays believes in scores of assumptions for which there's good evidence, but no perfect visual proof. And does not science demonstrate the visual proof is the weakest proof? It's being constantly revealed as mankind studies the material world that outward appearances are not inward reality at all. To illustrate, the prosaic steel girder is a mass of electrons whirling around each other at incredible speed. These tiny bodies are governed by precise laws, and these laws hold true throughout the material world. Science tells us so. We have no reason to doubt it. When, however, the perfectly logical assumption is suggested that underneath the material world and life as we see it, there is an all-powerful guiding creative intelligence, right there our perverse streak comes to the surface, and we laboriously set out to convince ourselves it isn't so. So we went through a bunch of stuff there to just talk about navigating prejudice, our own, not necessarily other people's. But we know from our scientific learning that we are in a world of action-reaction, and there are some precise chemical responses to various things. Yes, intellectually we know it. Things are not always as they appear. What I think we do not always internalize is we are also in that. Those tiny bodies that are doing exactly what they're ordered to do, I don't have any trouble believing those tiny bodies are doing what they have to do. I have a lot of trouble believing I'm doing exactly what I've got to do.
Right.
And that I get no credit for it. Make any sense what I'm saying?
Yes.
We are all in that.
Yes.
How many of you have found that you are empowered to be kinder than you feel like being?
Absolutely.
Act better than you felt like acting?
Yes.
In real time.
Yes.
Then the laws of the world were suspended for you
Right.
because of your identity.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Why would I not want to come to believe and improve consciousness of that? Some of you are feeling it now. And I got a room full of junkies here. I don't know how the rest of y'all are doing it. So I said, we read wordy books and indulge in windy arguments thinking we believe this universe needs no God to explain it. Now again, substitute the word. How does this universe not need power to explain it?
Right.
No one would make that argument. No one would make that argument. Okay, so lay aside prejudice. Yes? Were our contentions true, it would follow that life originated out of nothing, means nothing, and proceeds nowhere. Some people get offended by that description, but tell me if your active addiction didn't look like that's how you believe. Instead of regarding ourselves as intelligent agents, spearheads of God's ever-advancing creation, we agnostics and atheists chose to believe that our human intelligence was the last word, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and end of all. Rather vain of us, wasn't it?
Yes.
They ask a question and we all want to jump right on board, but let's consider. What do they mean? What's the Alpha? The beginning. So I don't want to get in a theological discussion of the beginning of life, but how many of you would have to admit that there was some event that preceded your awareness that caused you to be? Do you have parents? Did they consult you prior to consummation? Yeah? I mean, we can sort of figure out where we are theologically here. I'm not going to get into that debate, but the whole point is most of us don't know anything about the beginning. Yes? And then it says the omega. So how many of you in your active addiction saw people die doing the same things you were doing? How many of you even lived in some guilt and shame that it wasn't you? Why me and not, Okay, so apparently you're not very good at the omega either. How many of you got some space and time in your existence that you don't have a lot of recall? Decade or two, right? Okay, so I don't know anything about the beginning, nothing about the end, and not a whole lot about some of the middle. So that definitely would be vain of me to think I'm all that. Yes? Okay. And when he talks about being spearheads of God's ever-advancing creation, it's just poetic license to say, this power animates you to be his hands and feet, and he needs a follower that will do as he wills. And what he wills is that the world be saved through him. Yes? And it starts with all of us that have been in the lowest places, right? Because we know the way in and the way out. Yes? All right. So we who have traveled this dubious path beg you to lay aside prejudice, even against organized religion. So I'm going to have to start confronting some of those thoughts I've had about people, right? Whatever. We have learned that whatever the human frailties of the various faiths may be, these faiths have given purpose and direction to millions. Notice how they didn't give this doctrine, this theology, this religion, this dogma. They didn't say that gave them anything. They said their faith. Got to have a little bit of faith. Yes? People of faith have a logical idea what life is all about. Now, people who don't understand what they're talking about know when something goes wrong, I know today there's purpose in it for me. So I quit looking for who to blame and start seeing what to learn. I wasn't always that way. It's a logical idea of what life is all about. Because I don't care how spiritual you think you are, life is going to throw some crap at you. And usually when you're thinking, you pretty much got her whipped. So actually, we used to have no reasonable conception whatever. We used to amuse ourselves by cynically dissecting spiritual beliefs and practices, which we might have observed that many spiritually minded persons of all races, colors, and creeds were demonstrating a degree of stability, happiness, and usefulness, which we should have sought ourselves. So something about order and direction and fellowship centers us. The atmospherics of it are good for our emotional and mental states. Yes? That's why when you first get into treatment or whatever, they tell you, make your bed. I don't want to make your bed. I don't feel good. Messy bed, messy head. Make your bed. I know everyone hates it, but it's true. Because your disorder is simply reflecting what's going on within you. So you want to feel better within, straighten around you. Yep. Change your atmospherics, because atmospherics matter. All right. So instead, we looked at the human defects of these people and sometimes used their shortcomings as a basis of wholesale condemnation. We talked of intolerance while we were intolerant ourselves. We missed the reality and the beauty of the forest because we were diverted by the ugliness of some of its trees. We never gave the spiritual side of life a fair hearing. If that's you, ask yourself if that's true. If you were just so prejudiced by a bad experience that you just refuse to accept anything as possible. Right? Because a lot of us have done that. And a lot of people come to recovery and they get taught fellowship, not program. And then they're, well, I hate AA, it doesn't work. AA the fellowship or AA the program? Right. Because the power found in AA the program works in every situation, no matter what, forever and forever, and it always has. Sorry. Same today, tomorrow, the year after. So in our personal stories, you will find a wide variation in the way each teller approaches and conceives of the power which is greater than himself. Whether we agree with a particular approach or conception seems to make little difference. Experience has taught us that these are matters about which, for our purpose, we need not be worried. There are questions for each individual to settle for himself. If you get serious about spiritual growth, you'll do your own research and you'll conclude what you conclude. You couldn't have got here without having been drawn. And if you stay, it's probably because you've dug deep to find out more about this power that animates. Because you won't stay in these rooms comfortably forever if, you just don't. If you don't believe me, hang around a while and watch how many don't stay. On one proposition, however, these men and women are strikingly agreed. One proposition. Every one of them has gained access to and believes in a power greater than himself. That's the central core of what AA, the manner of living, builds everything from, is a common belief in a power we've gained access to that reshapes my experience. This power has in each case accomplished the miraculous, the humanly impossible. Have any of you been here long enough to know how impossible it is for someone with as severe a mental illness as you had to get up and live normal life? You have to just stay here a while and then you start to find out. Because at first I got here, I didn't think I belonged. I don't want to be with those people. Then I thought, I hope no one who knows me sees me here. Anyway, as a celebrated American statesman put it, let's look at the record. Here are thousands of men and women, worldly indeed. They flatly declare that since they have come to believe in a power greater than themselves. Now think about that. That's the reason for the book. The book is not called The Big Book. It's called Alcoholics Anonymous, the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. It's their testimony, not yours, not somebody in the middle, not someone's. There's a doctor's opinion, but you know what they call it? The doctor's fucking opinion. You know why? Because it's his opinion. The rest of it is the shared experience of the first 100 who have spawned a fellowship of millions. So they flatly declare that since they have come to believe in a power greater than themselves, to take a certain attitude toward that power, and to do certain simple things, there's been a revolutionary change in their way of living and thinking. How many of you have needed such a revolution? How many of you have been sober a while and on the regular need a revolution? Yes. Yeah, because sometimes we think things are just supposed to straighten out, and sometimes they don't straighten out. Right. Or sometimes they straighten out for a while and then they unstraighten out. Yeah. And the common element's always me in the way I perceive, right? So in the face of collapse and despair, in the face of the total failure of their human resources, what are my human resources? I got to rely on my belief in me, in the total failure of human resources, they found that a new power, peace, happiness, and sense of direction flowed into them. Many of you have felt it tonight as we've talked, that power, peace, happiness flowing in, it renews, it's right. And that's in the last analysis, it's only there that he may be found. So that's the thing to do as we go out from here, when we get off, when we start to know we're in trouble in our thinker, to get centered in some atmospherics that get us focused inward. What's going on, right? What am I clinging to? Okay. And then it says this happened soon after they wholeheartedly met a few simple requirements. If you're new and you haven't embarked on the manner of living, then you haven't met a few simple requirements. So in another step, we're going to say a prayer based on this experience to a power that previously maybe many of us didn't know, but now we've been told that power we experienced is that power we call God. Oh. Yes. And I'm going to turn my life, yes, my thoughts, my will, my life, my breath over to that power. Yes. See, he doesn't need your actions if you're not in concert with him. Yes. So he needs your breath because he's going to use it to speak life. Yes. Don't you understand? Yes. It's a really serious decision. And that's why we see people get up and walk when we're properly awakened, right? Because it's still happening. The age of miracles is still with us. Yes. Okay. So this happened after they wholeheartedly met a few simple requirements. So what were they? Trust God, clean house, work with others. Yeah? Once confused and baffled by the seeming futility of existence, they show the underlying reasons why some of them were making heavy going of life. Leaving aside the drink question, they tell why living was so unsatisfactory. They show how the change came over them. When many hundreds of people are able to say that the consciousness of the presence of God is today the most important fact of their lives, they present a powerful reason why one should have faith. We don't witness like that very good in our recovery fellowships anymore in large numbers, and we should really think about why that is, because our effectiveness, the reason we started doing this meeting so many years ago is because the effectiveness back in the days they wrote this book and for 15 years thereafter was in the neighborhood of 65%. And today we're at about 3%. And all the advances in medical science and all those things, we've lost all of that because we quit bringing truth to the game. Not your truth, not my truth, the truth. Make sense?
Yeah.
So that I boldly declare that since I came to believe in this power and the mission he has for my life, that my life has been radically changed, and because of that change, others have been radically changed.
Yes.
And I had nothing to do with it except to receive the instruction and impart what was given me.
Yes.
So I got to jump because I'm going to run out of time. Okay, I'm going to go to page 53. So arrived at this point, we were squarely confronted with the question of faith. We couldn't duck the issue. Some of us had already walked far over the bridge of reason. Notice how the bridge and reason are both capitalized. Think they did that by accident? No. We've walked over the bridge of reason toward the desired shore of faith. The outlines and promise of the new land had brought luster to tired eyes and fresh courage to flagging spirits. They're talking about your first days in recovery, and you walked in, and everyone had always been telling you for the longest time, get out and stay out. And people were saying, hey, good to see you. Welcome. You're the most important person in the room. Come back. And you probably still didn't smell very good, and you didn't think very good, and they were speaking life into you. And so you're, yeah, I got a little bit of hope now, yeah? But I'm still not ready to step ashore. So friendly hands had stretched out in welcome. We were grateful that reason had brought us so far. Reasons in capital letters. There's another book that says, no one can come to me except those the Father empowers. If you got here, we know who brought you. But you might want to talk to those of us that are walking in our identity, because you can walk out of here and not have your identity. And that is a travesty for us humans. So, but somehow we couldn't quite step ashore. Perhaps we'd been leaning too heavily on reason that last mile. Look at that. Reason's capitalized again. I've been dependent all along. I was struck sober and then sent out on a mission, and I didn't know any of it. Okay, that was natural, but let us think a little more closely. Without knowing it, had we not been brought to where we stood by a certain kind of faith? Why'd you come to 12-step recovery?
Because I was going to die.
Well, and someone told us it would work. Or someone told us that's what we needed. And most of us, if we're honest, didn't really believe that. Well, here we are, right?
Yep.
So then it says, did we not believe in our own reasoning? So there's what I'm going to do from this point. I'm going to stop, but I want you to question for this week. Are you still worshiping your own reasoning? Because if you're waiting on your reasoning to make a way, I'm here to tell you the way's been made, and it's going to be in spite of your reasoning. Right? There's another book talks about a bunch of people trying to escape captivity, and they got all the way to the shore of the Red Sea, and every fucking one was looking for a boat. There weren't no boats, boys. He just made a way. So, anyway, see you next week.